I apologize for interrupting that there. We're now going to cross live to a conference where the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is answering questions from journalists after meeting with his Paraguayan counterpart. Let's listen in.
Russia suspending its airstrikes in Aleppo. This is a goodwill gesture. We expect that this pause that we have announced will be used to finally separate Jabatan Nusra and similar groups from the militias supported and armed by the United States, some European countries, and some of the regional powers. They promised to do that for a long time, at least since February, but they never did it, under various pretexts, and we are actually wondering if this position of our Western colleagues is because our Western partners want to spare al-Nusra and use it later to oust Bashar al-Assad, even though they keep telling us that this is not their intention, and this definitely goes against all the decisions by the UN Security Council. Still, when we had a meeting last Saturday in Lausanne, in Switzerland, with John Kerry and representatives of a number of regional countries, we agreed that we'll get our military experts working together in Geneva to finally work out what I just mentioned, to separate the so-called moderate opposition from Jabhat al-Nusra. There are different ways to accomplish that. You can just drive Jabhat al-Nusra from this area, and we will naturally support this approach because this is part of the de Mistura plan. But those who don't want to be associated with terrorists will naturally have to sign a ceasefire agreement, like the agreement between Russia and the US adopted a long time ago stipulated, and UN Security Council resolutions as well. So yes, there was an agreement achieved in Lausanne that our military expert will do their best to work this out, and we'll have a meeting in Geneva tomorrow. We'll see what will come out of it. You also asked about Mosul. Mosul is a city, is a major city with 1.5 million civilians living there, and naturally we have been following this offensive. We all want to see the so-called Islamic State defeated. The city has not been encircled entirely, as far as I know. I don't know what's the reason for it. I just hope that it's because they were not able to encircle it entirely. Anyway, there is this corridor left, and there is a certain risk that ISIL fighters may leave Iraq and go to Syria instead. So we will keep track of the situation and respond politically and militarily accordingly. And if this happens, and if they go to Syria, where we have our forces operating based on the legitimate request of the legitimate government, if there are more ISIL fighters going in there, we'll have to respond. This offensive is a complicated one. It will involve airstrikes, just like in Aleppo, and ground forces as well, I believe. And actually, there is a large number of troops involved in this offensive. And it's important for the region that there is even a rivalry between different groups as to whose forces will get into Mosul first. There are some Shia forces, there are Kurds, Turkey. You know that there is a Turkish expeditionary force there, and the Iraqi leadership is very much opposed to it, and there are also 1,500 U.S. special forces officially They are there as advisors, but of course 1,500 advisors is quite a huge number. So, who will be part of this ground force? This will very much affect the situation in the region. This will very much determine the role played by Turkey, the role that Kurds will have in all these processes. And we have long been saying that there is a need to normalize relations between the Sunni and the Shia Muslims, so it will also affect this situation as well. And as far as humanitarian situation in Mosul is concerned, the number of refugees, civilian refugees, the range is very wide, from 200,000 to almost 1 million people. We have this figure, 900,000 refugees, Iraq, Syria, other neighboring countries where these refugees can go to. Nobody has the capacity to receive so many refugees. So we just hope that those who launched this offensive considered all these factors and options. And then you asked this third question about the intention to freeze RT's bank accounts without any explanations. Well, we made some comments yesterday. Our spokesperson talked about the issue, and it is perfectly clear that the decision was not made by the bank, not by any bank. In fact, no bank can make this decision on its own. And the situation is very obvious. You know what they say. Never treat others the way you don't want to be treated yourself. And that's all I have to say on the issue.
Dear colleagues, if there are no more questions, our press conference will be over. Thank you very much.
Sorry for interrupting there very quickly. It's RT International there, the Russian foreign minister there addressing reporters in downtown central Moscow, covering issues of the ongoing offensive against ISIL in Mosul, Iraq. Also, the humanitarian pause in effect starting on Thursday, although military action has now stopped in Aleppo to prepare the way for that humanitarian pause. For now, though, here on RT International, always bear in mind, get more details on our website. For now, on air, though, it's boom bust.